Throughout the generations, OnePlus has absolutely nailed the speed and fluidity and performance you'd expect from a company that prides itself on delivering flagship phones. But there's always been one area of weakness, and that's the cameras. For the OnePlus 9 series, however, it's brought in some outside help to try and fix this issue in the form of its partnership with Hasselblad. Has it worked, though? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and this is our review of the OnePlus 9 Pro. And while you're here, if you could hit that like button, subscribe and tap the notification bell, that would be tremendous. Now, OnePlus has three different coloured finishes for the OnePlus 9 Pro, and we've been using the silver coloured morning mist colour, which is oh so shiny. At least the bottom third of the back is. It's reflective enough that you could see your face or anyone else's face in it. This glossy reflective surface subtly gradients into a more misty, foggy look at the top, but all of it is in a silver colour. The surface of the glass on the outside is glossy and slippery and attracts fingerprints like nobody's business. All in all, meaning you may just want to use the case or pick up the frosted glass pine green variant instead. Still, there's plenty to like about its design. The camera housing, for one, has a look about it that says the designers really cared about how it turned out. It's not just a characterless rectangle stuck on the back. It's colour matched to the back, and each of the two main cameras has a metallic ring around the lens, making it stand out against the background. It'll certainly make it look different to its competitors. The rest of the design is very familiar, and will be to anyone who's used the OnePlus phone over the past year or so. The glass curves on the back towards the edges make the large phone feel a bit more comfortable than it would if it was completely flat and square. It's not the lightest phone around, but in its size category at under 200 grams, it's not too heavy either. It's bearable day to day. Plus, all the buttons being within easy thumb reach means there's not going to be too much overstretching going on to reach the alert slider or the volume rocker. And while we're on the subject of practicality, the Pro has IP68 rating against water and dust ingress too. So when this slippery fish does inevitably slip out of your hand into a sink full of water, it won't be damaged. Unlike the non-Pro version, the OnePlus 9 Pro doesn't have a completely flat panel, but the curves on the screen are definitely smaller than they have been in the past. And that means the phone feels a bit chunkier than the 7 Pro from 2 years ago. But it means it's less prone to accidental touches. In fact, we didn't really experience that many at all. Plus, the bezels are really skinny, giving you a full, almost edge-to-edge screen feel with only a neat little selfie camera punching its way through the top corner. Now, segueing neatly to talk about display and software for a second, and it's not just in physical button placement where OnePlus has attempted to make its large phone comfortable to use. Oxygen OS went through a massive refresh for its Android 11 based version, first launched on the 8T. This update didn't just radically change the entire look and feel of the previously stock-like experience, it was designed so that bits you need to reach with your thumb are easy to get to. Buttons and controls are shifted down so you don't have to awkwardly stretch across the top corner. The only element that works against this somewhat is that OnePlus has fewer of its own apps than it used to. It's gone all in with Google, and that means apps like Messages and the phone app are all Google's. None of these moves are bad really. Google's Discover, for instance, is far more useful than the OnePlus shelf that used to sit to the left of the home screen, and that in itself hasn't disappeared completely. You can still get to it by swiping down on the home screen, but personally I didn't find that useful at all, so I just replaced that gesture with one that brought down notifications, further helping that reachability issue. Now, as for the screen, that's one of the best available on the market currently. It's a 6.7-inch AMOLED panel, and that has a top refresh rate of 120 Hz. Like Samsung's latest flagships, it also has adaptive refresh rate capabilities, and it can go all the way down to just 1 Hz when it detects a static page. It also means it's pretty much identical to the screen on the Oppo Find X3 Pro. That means it is mostly awesome. It's really bright and vivid, and once you've enabled its maximum sharpness, it's fantastically crisp too. And as usual, there are plenty of additional features like the ability to tune the appearance to your preferences. There's dark mode for making the interface dark, comfort tone for automatically adjusting the white balance based on the ambient light, and there's reading mode for, well, reading. On the whole, it's a mighty fine display where colours pop, bright areas are super bright, and animations are smooth and fluid. At times it feels like there's a tiny bit too much contrast and it was a bit too dark when the brightness levels dropped, like it didn't retain the balance of highlights and shadows and colours with the screen dimmed, but on the whole it's still a great display. So cameras. Both the primary and ultra-wide cameras use a high-end sensor. In good light, you'll get sharp, mostly noise-free pictures from the primary camera, while the freeform ultra-wide lens will ensure you don't get lots of curving and distortion at the edges. It doesn't suffer from that fisheye effect you sometimes see in such lenses. It's not as good in low light situations as the primary sensor, but neither is perfect once light levels drop. The only inescapable real problem isn't with either camera individually, it's when you compare them to each other. At some points it looks like the results are from two different phones. The ultra-wide often boosts warmth and saturation to give a really vivid, almost more orange feel, while the primary lens delivers a more neutral, cooler image where blues are more standout. You can see this difference when you switch to macro mode, which automatically switches to the ultra-wide sensor to perform the close-up shot, as well as when you shoot at nighttime using nightscape mode. Now, nightscape mode has seemed to be improved from previous generations of OnePlus phones, though, with the 9 Pro able to draw in decent light in bad conditions. We did sometimes struggle to get results looking sharp though, with finer details and edges blurring a bit. Not an out of focus blur, more like a motion blur where it hadn't really compensated for any minor handshake. Not quite enough at least. It wasn't the only time the phone's camera struggled with detail either. Using the telephoto zoom lens, which is 3.3 times that of the main camera and can reach up to 30 times digitally, we found that detail just lacked. It's not a great optical zoom. Cycle through the cameras at ultra-wide at 1 times, 3.3 times, 5 times, 10 times and 30 times, and you'll see how the tree branches in the 3x3 shot turn into a weird looking wormy type mush. And once you zoom past that, the detail becomes increasingly ropey, with the images at the top end looking more like an oil painting than a photograph. As for macro mode, there's pretty strong in good light, details are sharp and in focus, and the background blur adds depth and doesn't suffer from unnatural and nauseating bokeh that often dedicated macro lenses do. That's because it's obviously not a dedicated macro lens, it uses the ultra-wide sensor instead, so it actually makes a good image. As for performance and battery, if there's one thing you can virtually guarantee from OnePlus when it comes to its flagship phones, is that they are fast and fluid and speedy, and for 2021 that has not changed. The performance this year is driven by the Snapdragon 888 processor. In all areas, the OnePlus 9 Pro performs like a proper flagship should. It's fast and smooth, loading any games and apps without stopping to think about it. We had no instances of stutter or delay. Part of that is also down to that screen refresh rate we talked about earlier, but also its touch sampling rate, which can read at rates up to 240 Hz. The animation on screen responds virtually immediately when you make a gesture on it, making it feel nimble and instant. Even simple and mundane tasks like refreshing a Twitter feed or loading a web page is hassle-free. Now, during our testing there were moments where after an hour or so of gaming the phone became a little warm, but it never became uncomfortable. And as for the battery life, with the screen cranked up to its highest resolution and frame rate settings, the 4,500 mAh capacity is more than capable of pushing you through a full day. On our heavier days with 3 or more hours of screen time, we got to bed with somewhere around 30% mark left over. But even on quieter ones, however, we never quite got the sense it made it through 2 full days. But here's the thing though, battery anxiety is never a thing with the OnePlus 9 Pro because it has fast wireless and fast wired charging. If you use the included 65 watt wired charger, you can get the battery from dead to 100% in under half an hour. It's a full charge in just 28 minutes, which is quite frankly mind-boggling. Plug the phone in for 10 minutes and that'll provide you enough to get you through a good few hours. But it gets better. Using OnePlus's latest Warp Charge wireless stand, which is an optional extra at your expense, you can get a full charge in 43 minutes. So with the Pro, OnePlus tried to address the series' historical biggest issue, the cameras. However, even with support from Hasselblad, it still doesn't quite hit the mark. But the rest of the phone really is fantastic, with fast wireless charging being truly brilliant and the display being top-notch too. Let me know what you think of this latest phone from OnePlus. Will it be one you'll be buying this year? Shout out in the comments. I've been Cam, I'm at Cam Bunton on social media, so find me on there if you want to. And don't forget, hit that like, subscribe and tap the notification bell if you did like this video. It helps us a great deal. Bye for now.